Hi, my loves, and welcome back to another episode. It's been a little while since I recorded an episode about lessons of Kalari, and we're 5.5 months into the diploma now. So here we go. There's going to be my 3 life epiphanies from my 3 major injuries that I've had so far in Kalari, because I always think there's of course lessons in everything, right? There's learnings in everything. There's ways that we can use our life around us to understand things differently in life, because ultimately that is the way that life teaches us. This is our playground, this is our school, if you want to think of it as a school playground, if you want to think of it as a playground, this is our arena to be able to get feedback and to evolve and to change and to grow, hopefully always in a beautiful direction. And so there's been 3 injuries that I've had in Kalari. Some of them are ongoing. The first big one that I had was with my knee, my right knee in particular, but also both of my knees. This is something that everybody has in Kalari, just from the nature of the practice. Then I hurt my ankle, also my right ankle. Specifically, this is an ongoing one also. And the biggest one at the moment, my most problematic one at the moment, is my right elbow, like a tennis elbow situation, which is really giving me a lot of grief. So I've been pondering about these injuries and just thinking about them. And there are some very, very beautiful lessons for myself. And so I'm going to share them with you just in case these also help you in some way. So just for a little bit of context, the knees are always I don't want to say problematic in Kalari, but they bear a lot of the brunt of the practice. So in Kalari, there's a lot of long lunges, backward and forward, quite explosive movements, also short lunges and also squatting. And there's a lot of moving in between these postures, like long lunge and back, this kind of thing, as you can imagine. And it really is a principle of Kalari that your front lunging knee, must be 90 degrees, exactly. So your shin bone is going down to the floor this way, straight, and your thigh is going parallel to the floor, straight, and you really want it to be 90 degrees. What happens a lot is this, the knee goes over the ankle, and there's a lot of pressure in the knee, a lot of pressure, especially when you're pulling your leg back and forward. And of course, our knees were not meant to be loaded repetitively in that way. And I did have this really, really chronic knee pain for probably 6 weeks or something like that, maybe a month to 6 weeks. And I was trying everything. I was wearing this knee brace. I was using absurd amount of Tiger Balm. You guys have seen the pictures on my Instagram, I'm sure. And it just wasn't going away. It was getting worse and worse and worse, all of the time aching, all of the time painful in the class. And in some moment, I just thought to ask my knee, what are you trying to tell me? What are you trying to tell me here? Why are you hurting so much? This is a beautiful thing to ask your body. Your body will always give you the answers if you ask it. And the answer just came to me. It's no, you're not taking care of me in the practice. I don't want to be past 90 degrees and you're pushing me past 90 degrees all the time. And so I thought, oh my goodness, I am. So I became, in that exact moment, meticulous at every single class, every single movement in every class, checking, is my knee at 90? Is my knee 90? Is my knee 90 degrees? And of course, a lot of the time it wasn't. And I had to really almost overcorrect myself and be overly cautious of this thing to get it back to 90 degrees every time. And miraculously, within one day, the pain went away. And sometimes when I get a little bit lazy or not lazy, but tired or sloppy with taking care of it, the pain comes back momentarily, just as a little reminder of hey, you remember you said you would look after me and we're going to keep it at 90. And I just think this applies so much to our own life, my own life and our own lives, where we can act out of alignment for a period of time. And we'll think that we're getting away with it. It will seem like everything's going fine. But at some moment, it just will stop working. And this can happen in a lot of different ways. It can manifest in a lot of different ways. So what I mean by that is obviously with my knee, I was pushing it out of alignment. I was using it out of alignment with the rest of my body. And for a period of time, it worked, our bodies are extremely, extremely accommodating of our shortcomings, and our bodies really try hard to balance all of the imbalancing forces that we give it, but it has a limit. and then we get to the limit and we suddenly become symptomatic. I got symptoms, the knee pain. And then we like band-aid those symptoms, and we keep doing those things that are harmful. And then down the line, we end up then, of course, symptoms turns into diseases, and diseases turn into like very debilitating conditions, and ultimately end up in people dying from things like at some moments from some health conditions, which is what, of course, we don't want. So what we want to be able to do with our bodies, like with my knee, is notice when we're out of alignment, which there will always be signs. There's always signs. And when we're paying attention, we will catch the signs before they turn into symptoms, if we're really paying attention. Or they will be just like minor symptoms. And then when we don't catch them at that point, they will continue to get worse, and then they will become like quite like disruptive symptoms in our lives, like ongoing pain, stopping me from sleeping, like all of these kind of things, or stopping me from training properly. And as it goes on and on and on, like if I continued to do those things, I'm sure I would have developed some sort of like osteoarthritis in my knee and maybe have needed surgery and blah, 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 which is what I definitely don't want. And the same is also true in our lives. We also, as human beings, tend to be extremely accommodating. And that is just part of our nature as human beings, which is a beautiful thing, you know, like we want to fit in with the tribe, which is like a very ancient prehistoric urge inside of all of us, inside of our DNA, to be part of the group, to not be on our own, because historically it was not safe to be on our own, to survive on our own. And so what we want is to be accepted by people. We want to be accommodating. We want to feel part of a group. We want to feel valued, and we want to feel valuable. And so in this circumstance of doing this in our life, sometimes we make big accommodations, which actually mean that we are not really acting in authenticity with our own self, with our own being, with our own desires, with our own beliefs, with our own values, with the things that are important to us. And as that goes on and on and on, it turns up in like very, very, very also debilitating ways in our life, in a different way. So, for example, you can think of like any kind of situation where maybe you've been in a friendship or a relationship before where the person had different values than you did. They had different things that were important to them. And in order to be accommodating, of course, in relationships, there's like some process of like finding some equilibrium between two different people with two different lives and two different world paradigms. But if you overly accommodate too much, if you pretend that things that are actually important to you are not important, or you let go of some of your values, or any of these, could be anything, could be like you're normally quite a fit and active person and you get into a new relationship and this person is like just not that interested in exercising or eating that well. And so at the start you're getting to know each other and it's fine, and like maybe you're still doing your own thing, and then when you're together you cook like pizzas and eat pizzas and go out for dinners and things like that. And then when you're like doing relaxing activities together, you go to the movies and maybe you watch a show at home, and maybe like they're really into gaming and you also get into gaming and all of these kind of things. And then at some moment you realize like, oh, all of these things that you used to do, that you really loved doing, that made you feel really good, you've just stopped doing them very, very, very gradually. And then you're suddenly just like not the same person that you were anymore. And it comes at a cost, right? You feel different. You are different in your life. You're eating differently. You're moving differently. So, of course, that has an enormous impact on the way that you feel mentally, the way that you feel emotionally, the amount of life you have in your body, the amount of vitality you have in your body and in your life. And it happens very, very, very incrementally over time. And then it might just happen that something reminds you of this, like maybe a friend invites you on a different friend invites you on a run, and you discover that actually you can't even run 3 kilometers anymore, and you used to be able to run 10 easily. Or maybe you find that you've put on like 5 kilos without realizing, and you don't fit into your clothes anymore. Or maybe you just feel like just really foggy in your brain, and you didn't used to feel like that. You didn't used to wake up feeling like that. And then at some moment you realize, hopefully sooner rather than later, and you realize and you think, what happened here? Like, what happened here? And the thing is that then you are acting out of alignment with your own self, your own nature, your own habits. And that comes at a cost. Some other places that this can happen is also like in the workplace or in other different scenarios when you're hanging out with people that maybe you wouldn't normally be friends with in your normal everyday life. And to be able to fit in, you want to be like them, so you maybe like make the same jokes that they do, or you like gossip the way that they do, or you let go of some of your values in that way. And then you realize like, actually, that doesn't make me feel good as a person. That doesn't make me feel aligned and alive and like full of my own essence and full of my own life force and my own individuality, my own uniqueness, my own gifts that I can share with the world. And the thing is that it's a tricky thing because it costs quite a lot of awareness initially to stay in alignment. It is difficult to do the postures in Kalari, making sure that my knee is at 90 degrees. I have to remember, I have to check, I have to think every time. Be careful, like how long of a step forward are you going to take? Because your knee needs to be at 90 and you don't want to have to make corrections once you've taken the steps. So measure it in your mind in advance, like know how far you're going to step forward. And so there is a thing of like paying attention constantly. And when I was fixing this as a problem, I had to pay a lot of attention. Now I don't have to pay as much attention, but it's still there. It's still always in my mind. And the same is true in life. Like we want to always have this awareness of like when I'm meeting people, when I'm with different people in my life, when I'm in different circumstances in my life, when I am doing different activities in my life, where am I like going out of alignment of my own self, either to fit in with other people so I can be accepted, to be accommodating, to make other people feel comfortable, because I don't want to stand out, because whatever the reason is. But we always want to keep that in our mind, because when we allow ourselves to be influenced by so many other different people and conditions in our life, we lose our own sense of ourself. We lose our own anchor in ourselves. And life becomes extremely difficult when we lose that center. We make decisions that we wouldn't normally make. We don't behave in the way we would normally behave. We end up with habits that we wouldn't normally choose. And those put us on a life path trajectory that we probably don't actually want to go down if we were paying attention to it. So this is the first lesson, life lesson of Kalari. Stay in alignment. Really stay in alignment as much as you can. And notice where you're going out of alignment, because you might think you're going to get away with it, but you won't. And try and pay attention to any like symptoms that come up and just think like, where did this come from? Why am I behaving like this? Why do I feel like this? Why am I doing this thing? Like, where did this come from? This is not mine. So whose is it? Where did it come from? Trace it back and then correct it. Because if you keep going down that path, you're going to end up in situations that you don't actually want, that you didn't actually choose. So that's the first lesson from my knee. So thank you to my knee. The second lesson is from my ankle. I have had problems with my ankles ever since I was very young in primary school. I sprained both of my ankles repeatedly, really, really badly. And so the ligaments of my ankles are extremely lax. They're extremely weak. And the muscles around that joint, around my ankle joint, really have to work very hard to stabilize the joint. And it was problematic. Obviously, when I was a child, I would sprain my ankles all of the time. It was excruciating. As an adult, it hasn't been such a big problem. It did sabotage me a little bit, actually. I was training really hard for the Barcelona half marathon, and I went skiing beforehand, and again, like, did something strange to my ankle, one of those muscles skiing, and I got like a crazy tendonitis of one of the tendons of my ankle that attaches under my foot. I couldn't walk. Like, I missed the Barcelona half marathon. I literally couldn't walk even, let alone run. So I had to rehabilitate it properly, and then I did a La Scala half marathon, which was very beautiful, like a few months later. And this is an ongoing problem in Kalari also, because a lot of the movements require a lot of ankle strength and a lot of ankle flexibility, which I have the flexibility, but it's not strong. It's risky and it's painful. And again, like, a lot of these movements are like quite explosive movements of like really sitting back almost into a splits with your ankle on a very kind of strange angle. And there's a lot of like jump kicks where you're like kicking your hand, like your foot is coming up and kicking your hand, which, like, if this ankle is lax, it really hurts. And a lot of like stamping forward, which also puts a lot of strain through the ankle. So, and this is just one that I've been dealing with mentally, because I find myself cheating. I find myself like not necessarily doing the movements properly. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but it's okay because your ankles are weak. Your ankles are weak. And this is another thing where maybe we have a good reason for a weakness in our life, a shortcoming in our personality, a shortcoming in our character, some sort of thing happened to us, some traumatic experience or some unpleasant experience in our past, maybe repeatedly, that makes us particularly sensitive to something, particularly, I don't want to use the word weak, but particularly easily hurt in some area of our life. And we have two options in this case. We can keep giving the reasoning for that as a reason for something being weak or for us being sensitive or easily triggered or not able to deal with a certain type of thing. We have a good reason to, right? I've got a good reason why my ankles are weak. You have a good reason for this thing, whatever it is in your life. But it's actually not that constructive. The other option that we have is to accept that there is a shortcoming, there is a weakness, there is a weak link in our self, in our system, and we can very intentionally strengthen it. And then we will be much stronger overall people because we'll have strengthened the weakest link in our character. And I always think of this, I've had this conversation actually multiple times over the course of the last few years where I will talk to people about something. One example that pops to my mind was I was talking to a friend about doing Ashtanga yoga. I was doing a lot of Ashtanga. And she said, yeah, I would really love to do Ashtanga, but like my wrists are really weak. And then I thought, what a funny thing to say. Like, then you should be doing Ashtanga so that you get stronger wrists. Because if you have weak wrists now, what about when you're 80? Like, what are you going to do when you're 80 when you need to like get a saucepan down from the top shelf of your kitchen? Or if you, heaven forbid, fall over and you need to use your arm's strength to be able to get up off the floor, like you're going to need to have strong wrists. So it actually is not that constructive to just have something be weak and just let it be okay that it's weak and let that be like good enough, I have a good enough reason, So in that moment where we have this choice between like continuing to use the excuse or the story or the reasoning or the rationale for why something is not as strong as it could be or why you are not as strong as you could be in some particular way, why not just really accept the fact, which is a difficult thing to do. I'm not denying that it's a difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult, painful, excruciating thing to have to do, to admit that we are weak in some way or that we are flawed in some way or that we are deficient in some way. It's a really intolerable, awful thing to do. We're really bad at it. We're really bad at admitting it to ourselves normally. We're also really bad at admitting it to other people. So, and of course, it's a difficult thing to admit it because once you admit once you actually take responsibility for it and not just use the story and kind of brush it off, then you actually do have a responsibility to do something about it, to strengthen it, to become more strong, more well-rounded, more capable at dealing with that thing. And of course, that's inconvenient, right? Like it's annoying to have to get stronger a lot of the time, unless you are really dedicated to your own development. So yeah, an example of this that I can think of for myself in my own life is that I can be extremely defensive, I would say. And in recently in certain connections in my life, I've been very, very, very defensive. And I can have a lot of different, also very good reasons why I'm defensive, I'm so tired, a lot of the time. I'm very fatigued. My body is very fatigued. So I just don't have that much spare capacity in my mind, spare bandwidth for being extremely patient, extremely tolerant, extremely understanding. And I'm very aware of these things. I'm really working on them. So it's very easy for me to be defensive in some moment, reflexively, and then just to be yeah, but I'm tired. I don't have the energy for this. I don't have the capacity for this. But is that actually constructive? No, it's not. I actually really need to learn to not be defensive. I need to learn, and this is, of course, is a long pattern going back a lot of years. I can, if I wanted to, I could really dig and come up with a lot of really good stories for why I am defensive, I was bullied extremely badly in school for a very long time, 10 years of my life, which is almost a third of my life, which really affects the brain development of a child. And so I am extremely sensitive to criticism, extremely sensitive. I would say very thin skin, and I have had for all of my life. I'm very, very, very sensitive to everybody's emotions around me. I'm very sensitive to my own emotions. I'm very sensitive to criticism. And so I don't like being criticized. I really, not even being criticized, I really don't like just not being spoken to very warmly and very kindly. So if somebody has some sort of feedback for me and it's delivered even in a well-meaning but blunt way, that will trigger my defensiveness, because this is like a protective pattern of mine, like I don't want to feel how I did when I was a child. So I've got a lot of very good reasons. I could keep going on and on and on. Like we all could keep going on and on and on for why we have good reasons for the way that we are. But actually what is much more helpful is for me to think just super bluntly with myself. Like I am very defensive actually. And I could spend a lot more time and effort pausing before I immediately defend something, and just taking a moment to think what I actually want to feel, first of all, what I actually feel and what I would like to convey, and what would actually be constructive. Like, am I going to learn anything about myself from just defending myself how I always do, or is there something, constructive to learn from what this person is trying to tell me? And so I'm very aware of this. I'm very aware of this in my mind. And what is actually much more interesting in my life is to explore this more, to put a lot of energy and effort into just not using the same old excuses that I've always used for why I have this weakness, why I have this deficiency, why I am the way that I am. My ankles are just weak. They've been weak almost my entire life, almost as long as since those same school years, so. But if I use those excuses, I can use them until the end of my life, and I'm never going to actually get anywhere. I can say that my ankles are weak for the rest of my life, but I'm not going to actually be able to get stronger, and I'm going to miss out on a lot of things in the Kalari diploma because I'm not going to be doing things properly, and I'm going to, I won't progress it the right way. I won't develop the right skills. I won't get to the very high level of proficiency that I want to get to. So that's the second lesson from my ankles. We can keep excusing our weaknesses, but what's actually much more interesting and much more conducive to our own development is to just accept a weakness, really accept it and strengthen it. Make it strong. Make it very, very, very strong. The third thing, and this is my elbow, oh, poor elbow, my ongoing elbow issue of my tennis elbow. It started happening at the end of last year. And it's been, before I started the Kalari diploma actually, I was doing a lot of repetitive movement with my arms, and then it started then, and it got, I think hacking at this red clay to plant my palm trees and all of my plants definitely didn't help it. And then it comes and goes. We started doing the sticks workshops and it got much worse then it got better. Then we went to Kerala, I did 3 days of Indian clubs. I knew it was going to make it worse. I should have really adapted those exercises, but I got carried away and it did make it a lot worse, and now it's very consistently painful, and it's very, very annoying. It's very painful. It's very painful in the sparring. When I use it too much, which I do, it wakes me up in the night, every half an hour or something, because it's aching so much. It probably needs, I don't know, maybe a lot of rest, but I'm not going to not do the classes, so I'm trying to navigate what's happening here. And what I think is happening, and the feedback that I've got from some other people, is that I'm holding too tightly the sticks when we have a short stick, and we do short stick sparring for an hour in the afternoons, and we also spar with long sticks, the long bamboo ones, and we do 2 hours of that in the morning. And when we do sometimes exercises, we do one section of exercises on our own, and then there's where we're sparring with another partner. And especially with the short stick, it hurts it a lot. But I'm holding, even in the ones where we're doing the movements ourselves, I'm holding the stick very, very, very tightly. And in sparring, I'm holding the stick very tightly. So when I'm holding the stick tightly and hitting, all of that impact goes straight to my elbow. And I thought this is also such a beautiful metaphor for life. And also I'm doing a lot of side questing at the moment into Qigong and Neigong, and exploring a lot of concepts there of Wu Wei and effortlessness, and really I'm trying to bring these things to my Kalari practice of how do we bring this effortlessness at the same time as exerting a lot of effort, right? But how do we make the effort not forced? How do we make it kind of a flowing strength? I'm still figuring this out. I think this is going to take a lot of time to figure out. But the same is true in life. Like, where are we holding too tightly to things? Like, where are we desperately trying to control things and we're gripping things so tightly and we are forcing things to be a certain way and doing things a very certain way to get a certain outcome, where we're really we could just loosen up. And there is a way to hold the short stick much more loosely, where you are like kind of going with the stick. You're using the momentum of the stick and of your body, and you're not just like kind of bluntly hitting something like you would hammer a nail or something like that, but you're kind of like flowing, and then the impact of the hit is kind of very evenly dispersed through many different parts of your body and your stick and the other person's stick, rather than just going like straight into your joints. And in our lives, this is also true. There is a overall arching rhythm of life. There is a flow in life. And a lot of the time we are really opposing this flow, and we are trying to force our own agenda in a way that maybe just isn't right. Like, you know, when we sometimes want something to happen, and no matter how much we try and force it to happen, it just doesn't unfold well. And then sometimes you might want to do something in your life and it's just like completely effortless. Like the right things pop up at exactly the right moments, and you get to do, and maybe you're probably still applying effort. You're still learning, you're still putting a lot of energy, but the thing is unfolding very naturally, and all of the right things happen at all of the right times, and you end up down that path. Like, this is part of the magic of life, I think. Like, life will encourage us down the right paths, and it will discourage us from the wrong paths for us. But sometimes when we're being discouraged from a path, we think we want it. So we force it and we force it and we force it and we force it. Maybe we force relationships far beyond where they should have just naturally ended. Maybe we force friendships far beyond when they naturally should have ended. Maybe we stay in jobs far, 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 far past when we should have just left that job. Maybe we think we want to do something and we force it and force it and force it, but maybe it's just not your thing, or not right now, you know? And life is always giving us feedback on this. And I read a very beautiful story of this the other day somewhere. And it was, someone was in a bus in Thailand, and it was like a very hilly bus. And someone dropped their drink bottle going down one of the hills, and it rolled all the way to the front of the bus. And then they were like, worried about getting up to get it in case they would fall over. And someone on the bus said, yeah, just wait till it goes up the next hill and it's just going to roll straight back down. And of course the bus went around the corner and went up the next hill, and the drink bottle just rolled straight back down. So it's like, pay attention to the landscape around you. Pay attention to what's going on around you, like your own vehicle, the landscape around you, and just think in longer spans of time sometimes, because sometimes then we can rush to the front of the bus and get the bottle and maybe trip over and maybe fall over, and all of these things could happen along the way. Or we could just like wait until you go around the corner, and then when the bus goes up the hill, your drink bottle will just come back to you. You can just reach down and pick it up off the floor. You don't have to exert all of that force, all of that effort, going against gravity to like go and get your drink bottle. Sometimes this is misinterpreted, I think, in the sense that like things should be like easy and flowy, in the sense that we shouldn't have to put effort. We shouldn't have to work hard. We shouldn't have to apply a lot of energy and effort towards something. But actually that's not true. We want to be able to still apply a lot of energy and effort into the things that we love, that we're passionate about, that are the things that are for us. But they will feel like this kind of flowing strength, rather than like forcing something to happen. I hope you know what I mean. It's a difficult concept to talk about, and it's interesting to read any kind of books on Taoism where they're always talking about this, of like effortless effort. And of course in martial arts, this is always a big part of any very advanced martial art, is that they really are moving with complete ease and effortlessness and like fluidity, like almost like they're floating, but with so much like latent power coiled inside of them. And that's how we want to move through our life, like with this extreme gravity, with this extreme flowing quality, at the same time as having this extreme gravity, where we're not really easily shaken by things, and we're not led astray by things, and we're not gripping so tightly, we're not so tense. We read like there is this beautiful quality in advanced martial arts of like just relaxedness in the being, in your body, in your movements. But on the inside, having this like very coiled, latent power. Ready. It's ready, but you're not holding it that tight. You know what I mean? So this is my ongoing lesson actually in my life always, like how to let go of control, how to just trust the process more, how to just look a little bit further into the future and just wait until the bus goes around and goes up the hill. Like we don't have to force everything now. We don't have to put so much effort now. So these are my 3 lessons from my 3 injuries at the moment. Always there's lessons every single day in Kalari. The whole journey is a giant portal into learnings and understandings and evolutions, as long as I'm paying attention to them. So have a look around your own self right now. Like what are the niggling things in your life right now that are trying to show you something, trying to give you an epiphany? Because life is always giving us epiphanies. We just have to be paying attention to them. We have to notice them. I hope these helped you. I hope these gave you some kind of insight as well. Sending you so much love.